By using the visual of a pickleball paddle, I want to show you the number one way that I believe we ruin relationships with other people. Relationships that we really want, like with our own kids or with our siblings, even our own spouse. So you see this paddle has had some damage and it's got this nasty tape job. It's almost like someone who has broken glasses and there's tape in the middle. From a mile away you could see it. So this person, when they show up for pickleball, immediately everyone's thinking, oh, they have a broken paddle. But let me show you my paddle. Isn't this a beautiful paddle? Isn't it amazing? Well, honestly, if you look close, you will see that it actually has two cracks in it. It has a crack on each side. But from a distance, no one's going to tell that. No one's going to know. Here's what we do as people. We try to live this life where it's not that we don't have cracks, it's that no one can see our cracks. And as long as no one sees the cracks in my paddle or in my life, then I am doing well. But if you have a crack or damage to your paddle that is visible, then we look at you differently. And this is what we do as human beings. We compare our problems to each other and decide who has a bad problem. And then we try to decide that our problem is an innocent problem. Your problem is darkness. My problem is an innocent issue. Your problem is dangerous. My problem is normal. And it causes us to look at people in such a way that we can be highly judgmental of a person who has an issue, like let's say your spouse has an issue with gambling. Well, I think gambling can certainly destroy people's lives. I certainly think that's a crack in the paddle, no doubt. But what if yourself, your problem is that you live in fear? Your life is dominated by fear. We look at fear differently. It is certainly a crack in the paddle, but I don't gamble. I just live in fear. Well, does living in fear cause damage? Does living in fear hurt people? Does living in fear hurt relationships? Does living in fear hurt our own kids? If I live in fear, do I not raise my kids and disciple them to also live in fear? Here's the danger. We can be a person who has what we think is an innocent problem and look at other people and decide they have an evil problem. And this destroys relationships. If I can look at this person and gasp and say, you need to fix yourself. We tell this person metaphorically, you can't play pickleball until you get that fixed. But at the same time, we take our paddle that has two cracks in it, and we get to play as much as we want. It's not that we don't have cracks in our paddle, it's that people can't see the cracks in our paddle. And so while I get to go live my life boldly, I get to be proud of who I am in spite of the cracks in my paddle. The people around me, maybe my spouse, maybe my kids, we put them on the sidelines and say, you know what? You need to fix that first. But don't we all have cracks in our paddles? Don't we all have cracks in our paddles? And shouldn't all of us step up and play the game of pickleball or play the game of our life in spite of cracks in our paddles? But what we tend to do is judge people when their problem is visible and give ourselves some kind of credit because we keep our problem hidden. What destroys relationships is not cracks in paddles, it's our response to cracks in paddles. If I'm the kind of person that can judge someone else because they have tape around an obvious problem in their life, if I judge them for that and see myself as somehow better than them, I have an evil on the inside of me that's going to ruin that relationship. If I'm the kind of person that can see my problem and think, well, I don't really have a problem, can't you tell? Because I'm not willing to be honest about these two cracks. Maybe these two cracks are far worse than the damage this paddle has. Maybe I'm two or three big swings away on the court from this paddle snapping off and spiraling into the neck of my pickleball partner. You see, I think we'd all like to have problems that seem innocent, so much so that no one recognizes it. I think the big danger in looking at people like this is when we judge people for their obvious bad problem, like gambling. We cause them to not be able to find freedom from it. Because our relationship with them becomes one of judgment rather than grace and love. And the more that we point our finger at the crack in their paddle, the more that they live their life like this. Yeah, I got a crack in my paddle. I can't play. I can't live. I can't love. I can't show up boldly. I can't dream. Because we help people, when we judge them, we help them to focus on their problem instead of seeing the bigger picture of the fact that they can still play the game with a broken paddle. And by the way, the person who hides the crack, this might be the worst kind of problem to have. Human beings we all have cracks in our paddles. The danger is not that we have cracks in our paddles. The danger is in how we respond to the cracks in our paddles. There are people who have what we call innocent seeming problems. I mentioned living in fear. We almost pat people on the back for that. Oh, you live in fear. I understand. I get it. But if you have a gambling problem, the sirens go off. We look at you and we label people like that as being evil, destructive, you're going to hurt us. But if you live in fear, oh, sweet thing. And we allow ourselves to have these problems in our life that are going to hurt us probably more than gambling would hurt us. We allow ourselves to live with those problems. My friend, I speak about this because I used to be very good at being this person that looked at people who had obvious bad problems and thought, that's bad. You better fix yourself. You better change. But I wasn't willing to show people my own cracks in the paddle. So what do we do with all of this? We all want to have great relationship with people. Probably the best way to do it, to begin with, is just to say, see my paddle? It's got cracks in it. You can't tell, but they're there. Because if we're willing to be honest about the cracks in our paddle, we can better love and help people with the cracks in their paddle. I hope this was helpful. If we haven't yet met, my name is Mark Delaney. I love to help people live their best, bold life. And for many years in my life, I couldn't do that. And a big part of the reason why I couldn't is because I was trying to prove there were no cracks in my paddle. When I finally was honest about it and showed people the cracks in my paddle, I began to live at a whole different dimension I like to call freedom. Freedom and purpose. Now, do I have cracks in my paddle today? Yes, I do. And I'm honest about them every day. But every day I get to live my best bold life while I have cracks in my paddle, where before I was always trying to hide my problems And that's what kept me in a prison. If you feel like you're living in a prison, you're not just stepping up and being yourself every day. I wrote a book that helps with this called One Step to Freedom. It's my story, and it's the story of other people, of how they found freedom to live their best, bold life. Once again, it's called One Step to Freedom. You can go online and find that. Hope it's helpful to you. Until we talk again, I want to just remind you of this thought. We all have cracks in our paddle, and it's okay. What we can do is be honest about the cracks in our paddle. Let other people see them, and then we can go have fun playing pickleball and living the game of life.